So welcome to MYFest 2024. This is Thinking Machines or Lying and Stealing, Ethics of AI in Education. I hope I got the full name right, but it's Dr. Torrey Trust will be facilitating the session, and I'm gonna hand over to her in a second. We have some of the community agreements that we co-created together in MyFest, and then you are welcome to attend this session regardless of race, ethnicity, background, disability, or whatsoever. We designed MyFest with the ethos of intentionally equitable hospitality, a practice that entails welcoming everybody within the space. So if you need to leave at any moment, you are welcome to do this. If you want to attend with your pets, children, parents, or any other member of your family, you're actually welcome to do this. Without wasting too much time, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Torrey so she can get started.
Yeah, sir, and Maha, I am truly honored to be part of MYFest and present with you all today. So as you might have heard, the title of mine, which I'm very proud of for finally coming up with something creative that I didn't need AI to come up with for me. Thinking Machines or Lying, Cheating, and Stealing Machines, Ethical Considerations for the Use of AI in Education. I wrote in the chat that you will have full access to the slides, but not quite yet because these slides are editable because I'm going to be asking you all to add to them later in the session. I don't want everyone jumping on and editing them as I'm presenting. But you will have full access to the slides. Also, this is an interactive session, so I will be asking prompts throughout and hoping for your support in thinking deeply about the prompts that I give and responding in the chat through text-based response. Or if you want to come on over the microphone, you're welcome to do that too, whatever is easiest for you. These are questions that I am still thinking through myself. It's not that I have any answers, but I was hoping today to be a collaborative conversation and thinking through some of these really critical issues when it comes to AI in education. So we'll get started with ChatGPT. ChatGPT, large language model developed by OpenAI, launched in November 2022. It is a generative artificial intelligence tool designed to generate human-like text based on response to a prompt from a user. After it came out, just in 2 months, it hit 100 million users, the fastest growing app in history, and it quickly became embedded into many different careers, such as real estate. If you take a look at this screenshot here of this article, this is January 28, 2023, just 2 months after ChatGPT was launched. Real estate agents say they can't imagine working without ChatGPT now. These tools have been brought into law firms, politics. In fact, they're being used right now to shape elections around the world, medicine, and so many other careers. But it's not just ChatGPT. Of course, every big ed tech company wanted to have some stake in the game of AI. So here's Microsoft's Copilot, which came out with its own large language model, one of the first multimodal large language models that I saw. And then Google launched Gemini, also a large language model similar to ChatGPT and has multimodal capacities. Facebook most recently, or Meta, released its latest version of a large language model, which was trained on the entire internet. 15 trillion tokens, and it has been embedded into Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Threads. In fact, if you have not seen it yet, it's interesting to say the least. So here's a post from a group that I'm in, Western Massachusetts Moms Connect. Someone posted, looking ahead to Mystic, Connecticut for a day trip with our 16-month-old. Any suggestions or recommendations? And then I happened to see this interesting comment that popped up from Meta AI. Sure, I can help you with that. Mystic CT is a great destination for a day trip, especially if you have a toddler who loves aquatic animals. The aquarium is definitely worth visiting at this time of the year. It's great to go. Here's what the aquarium features. Here's what will be great for your 16-month-old. This is being brought into tools that our students are using, whether they want to or not. It's not a matter of these students now going to ChatGPT or going to Gemini or going to Copilot. This is being embedded into Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook. Google's latest version is now being brought into their search engine. So when you search for something, it will have an artificial intelligence summary of responses before you go into clicking links. And this is Claude, the latest version of Claude. I'll just play a quick clip here showing its capacities.
Is that a paid version, Torrey?
What?
Is it a paid version of Claude or the free version?
Oh, that's a good question. This is I actually do not know. I'm not going to answer
So
that without my knowledge.
what's it showing? Because not everybody can see.
Yes, I was going to describe it. I just wanted to show it first. So this is the latest version of Claude. It's not Claude Pro, so I'm guessing it's the free version. Basically, what someone has done, and you can find this video on YouTube, is take a chart, upload it to Claude, and say, make this interactive. And then it does that relatively quickly so that a user can then take their mouse, put it over the chart, and it will pop up what each data point says. And then the user goes on to say, make a PowerPoint presentation, and it does that within seconds. So here we have a tool that can transform images into interactive images, design presentation slides, all within seconds. I have two more short clips to show as well.
Windows is I can now use two windows and I can literally drag and drop something from one window to the other, like in this case with the Northern Lights, and I'm able to ask it, hey, tell me about this phenomenon that happened in Seattle last weekend. And I get a great set of information on it.
So this was the latest launch of Microsoft just a couple weeks ago. In fact, OpenAI, Microsoft, and Apple, and all of these big companies just had these launches recently of the newest and greatest thing about their tools. Copilot is being brought directly into Surface tablets, into Microsoft computers. So it is embedded as part of these tools. And so that will allow for interoperability. So if you have an email window open and then you want to drag it to Copilot and say, what does this image say? Or bring it over here, or rewrite this email for me, Copilot can do that. In fact, Copilot, they even showed if you run into a troubleshooting problem on your computer, you can ask Copilot to look at your screen and figure out what's going on and solve that problem. And then the latest here from ChatGPT.
So, ChatGPT, what equation did I write down there? So
in this video, these three individuals are showing off the capabilities of the latest ChatGPT 4.0 Omni. They're holding their phone over a math equation that's written down on a piece of paper, and they're using AI vision to look at what's written on the paper and asking ChatGPT to reply.
Ah, I see it now. You wrote down 3x plus 1 equals 4.
Yep, exactly. So what's the first step I should take to try to solve this?
The first step is to get all the terms with x on one side and the constants on the other side. So what do you think we should do with that plus 1?
Okay, I'm going to try to subtract 1 from both sides and then I'll see what I get.
Great idea. Perfect. Now, what do you get when you subtract 1 from both sides?
Okay, so ChatGPT, this is what I ended up with. How does this look?
Spot on. Now you've isolated the term with x on one side, and it looks like 3x equal 3.
So this individual, as they are trying to solve their math problem, has ChatGPT in their ear, so to speak, to provide tutoring. This will become open access. That was their whole point with 4.0 Omni. So now imagine a student taking their phone up to the board in a math classroom, a physics classroom, where there's a complex problem and saying, solve this for me. and it can. Now, we're going to get into the mathematical capabilities of these tools, but the potential is there. So this whole concept of thinking machines and can machines think has come about many, many decades ago, 1950s, with the kind of early concept of artificial intelligence. And as these most recent large language model tools have come out, have become more advanced, we're seemingly asking this question, can machines think? This is the question that Alan Turing posed in thinking about the future of artificial intelligence. When will it get to the point that machines can think at the level of humans? In fact, Turing came up with the Turing test. So the test is basically, if you were to put two evaluators, two people in one room, and in the other room, there could either be artificial intelligence or a person, and they were to text whoever's in the other room a question, and that person or AI replies, and they can't tell the difference between AI and human responses. That is, the text is indistinguishable between human response and AI response. Then you have passed the Turing test. You've created an AI that's passed the Turing test. And before ChatGPT, no tool had really passed the Turing test, indicating that machines could indeed think. So recently, there's claims that GPT-4, which is what ChatGPT is now based on, has passed the Turing test, because most people cannot distinguish ChatGPT from a human responder, suggesting the famous Turing test has been passed for the first time. But is ChatGPT's intelligence really indistinguishable from a human? So Ethan Mollick, who does a lot of really incredible writing, it's worth following his blog, which I have linked at the end in my resource slide, wrote about some research he did comparing the output of most advanced large language models with expert writers. What he found is that the large language models didn't come close to matching the intelligence and writing quality and style of expert writers, but they were good at average writing. So the average person who's not an expert, who's not a journalist, an author, AI was kind of at that level. I was talking with a colleague of mine in computer science, and he called ChatGPT and other large language models mediocrity machines. What they do is they produce mediocrity. If you are producing mediocrity, like students who are doing writing in their classes, and you see AI doing the same thing, it may seem like AI is mimicking human intelligence, when really it's not. Now, when I say that students are doing mediocre work, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Students aren't experts. They come to our classes to learn from us. So their work is mediocre, but improves. I'm just saying when they come in with a mediocre level of writing, they see AI doing the same thing. They may think, these machines can think or can write as well as I can. Another research article in April 2024 found that when looking at AI-generated text versus human-authored text, that basically large language models can't replicate the nuances of natural language. So they're not quite yet, and maybe not ever able to truly capture the intricate patterns of the way people communicate and use language. And I've seen this, when I was talking with a lot of educators, and there's this huge fear that students will just turn to these tools to cheat and do their work for them. And educators started saying, well, you can tell when the text is AI generated. And I started thinking, like, can you really? I mean, I was thinking when I started looking at ChatGPT, wow, this is impressive. This is probably at the level of what my students are writing. But this past semester, I quickly was able to identify AI-generated text because my students had been writing every single week for me. And all of a sudden, one of the weeks, one of my students' writing just changed. The tone of voice changed. The writing was not connected to what we had talked about in class. It was not personal, and it was very obvious it was AI. And so we're still at the point that if you are reading students' works closely, you might very well be able to identify the difference between AI-generated and human-authored texts. In fact, in a study of high school students about whether they used AI tools to write their college admissions essays, one reason, so 9 out of 10 students said no. One reason they said no was that their belief that current AI tools have limitations and cannot yet generate high quality, personalized, original, and authentic college admissions essays that reflect students' skills, abilities, and unique writing styles. So students too think that while these tools might be labeled as thinking machines, they're not able to produce at the quality that they think is allowable to submit for college admissions essays. So if ChatGPT is not a thinking machine, then what is it? And I want to preface with whenever I say ChatGPT, I'm referring to any of these large language models. It was just easier in my titles to say ChatGPT here. So I'm going to go over a couple things that ChatGPT and other Gen AI chatbots are. First, they're guessing machines. This is really, really important to understand. There is a great New York Times interactive that shows you how these tools work. Basically, what happens is that someone writes a prompt, user writes a prompt. In this case, who is LeBron James? AI responds back, LeBron James is, and then uses a massive data set. We're talking billions or trillions of parameters, data that has been scraped and stolen from the web, and really complex math to give weights to words that should go next. Like in this example here, LeBron James's American professional basketball is the next highest weighted word. So in this interactive, it kind of walks you through what it looks like. LeBron James is an, options are American, NBA, it picks American, that's the next highest weighted, and then professional, basketball, NBA, former professional. Professional has 50, basketball has 1, the rest have 1, so professional comes next. Then basketball, then player, and just keeps going. So what it's doing is guessing which words best go together to make the most plausible sounding responses. One more time, it is guessing. The scary thing is it's really good at guessing, and it does it in a way that's so sophisticated it seems like it knows what it's saying, but it doesn't. And so then when you ask ChatGPT or any of these other tools to write about something that doesn't exist, like the secret petting zoo in the White House in the United States, it'll say, sure, I've heard about it in the basement. I'm so excited to check it out. No, it doesn't exist, but it doesn't know that. It is just generating a response that it thinks is best to what you have inputted. So this becomes problematic. It's problematic for our students who don't understand how these tools work. In fact, a recent research study showed that the main reason students, K-12 and higher education, use large language models is for information seeking purposes. So they go there like they would Google, but instead of Google. But it's not Google. Google will provide you with links to review information, to cross-check sources. These tools are just guessing which words go together. In this case, we have a lawyer in the United States who ended up using ChatGPT to write some of his court case documents for him and didn't realize how ChatGPT worked. He said, well, I heard about this new site, ChatGPT, which I falsely assumed was like a super search engine. What ChatGPT did was make up previous court cases to cite in his documents, and then he was caught for using AI to do his work for him and fined and humiliated for doing so. This also becomes really problematic when it comes to using these tools for grading student work and generating feedback. Leon Furs is a really incredible writer who writes a lot of critical pieces about generative AI. In one of his blog posts, he talks specifically about why we shouldn't use Gen AI to grade students' work. Again, these tools produce a probabilistic output based on patterns in the training data. In simple terms, they are guessing how to respond, how to provide feedback, and they're doing so without the capacity for genuine reasoning or understanding. So a teacher understands the context. They understand the student, their background, what they bring to the class, their writing style. AI does not. Now we're asking AI to review student work, to provide feedback, to grade work. That's where it becomes really problematic. Or in this case, this was a really interesting article to me that just came out a couple weeks ago, where I showed you that Facebook has brought Meta AI into commenting features. And so if someone writes a post within a group and no one has replied within a certain amount of time, Meta AI will reply. Now, the post I showed you was someone asking about the Mystic Aquarium and Connecticut, and Meta AI provided information that was seemingly helpful. What's scary in this case is a parent asked a question in a private Facebook group about a student who's both gifted and disabled who had experience with New York City public schools and received a response from Meta AI, which they didn't realize was AI, saying, "I have a child who is 2E, means twice exceptional," and went on to provide a response. These tools are designed to guess what the best response is. And because they've been trained on massive amount of data and in social media spaces, the best comments are the ones where users empathize, respond to questions, or provide help. The Meta AI is now acting as a parent of a kid in New York City public schools who is twice exceptional. This is really scary. And if you don't look closely, you may not even notice that AI is the one responding. Why is it scary? Because they're guessing machines. They're just making up answers. So let's think through this for a moment here. When might using a guessing machine help student learning? And when might using a guessing machine harm student learning?
Are you inviting people to answer in the chat or raise their hands?
Yes. So what I want you to do is to take, a minute or two here and think deeply about these questions. And then when you're ready, respond in the chat box. You can write help and then how you think it might help, harm. You can answer both questions. You can answer a single question, but we have a great group of people here, so I want to hear your thoughts, because it's not necessarily that everything's bad or everything's good, but we need to think through these to make informed decisions. So I'm going to be quiet for a second here so we can think through this for a moment. Seeing some great responses here, and it sounds like I am piggybacking off John's session this morning, which I am sad to have missed and hope it was recorded, because I'm impressed with John's work. And so it sounds like many of you have been thinking through this. I'll just highlight a couple here. Help brainstorming. I definitely think these tools, one of their greatest benefits is enriching creative thinking, because they are guessing tools, right? And so one of the ways I've learned about how to be creative is to take two unique ideas and throw them together and see what you can come up with. That's almost literally how these tools are working. They're just throwing together words to see what works. And so for me, I often turn to these tools for creative thinking, brainstorming, idea forming, revising sentences, because they work in that way. But a lot of you have hit it spot on that don't take what these tools write as face value, because they don't critically reflect. They can't confirm that the information is correct. So it's important to think about how these might harm student learning. And we're going to talk a little bit towards the end about how students are using these tools and why this is important to understand. Making some great comments here, and I appreciate your thoughtfulness. Harmful if important decisions will be made. It's biased. Yes, we're going to get into that a little bit as well. There was an interesting comment here. I'm going to see if I can find this again. Liz, it can act as a learning check. The students can reflect on whether the guess was accurate or not. I love that idea, and it's not something that I had thought of, right? And so you could use these tools to prompt it to write a response about something you're studying, and students could then analyze, did this tool guess right with the information that it provided? I love these ideas, so please keep sharing your ideas about this. All right. So moving forward, because that's just one thing to know about these tools. Next up, these chatbots are lying machines. So you may be familiar with the fact that very early on, and still to this day with earlier models like ChatGPT 3.5, you ask it to provide a list of references, and here you go. I have a screen recording where it's providing, ChatGPT 3.5 is providing a list of references about my own work. And there's a list of 10 articles. And if you look closely, they are in APA style. They look like they exist, right? These journals, many of these journals exist. Computers in Education, Journal of Research on Technology in Education. It looks like there's volume and issue numbers that seem legit. Years, there's authors, right? And so a student who is not an expert in writing references might say, oh, this looks great. I will copy and paste this into my work. I used my own work to just quickly notice what actually exists, and only 1 out of these 10 articles actually exists. So this happens because these tools are guessing machines, right? They're guessing which words go together to make the most plausible sounding response, but they're not designed to give you accurate information. So while they look like they're providing a sophisticated response, in this case, 9 out of the 10 references provided do not exist at all. I've never written with like half of these authors, Zinger and Terrell and Rezovic and Allen and Williams, but I have written with some of the others. So they can definitely trick you. How do these tools get away with that? Well, in their documentation, they basically state, do these tools tell the truth? There's always the possibility, right? So it's always worth looking at the documentation. And what I mean by that is the privacy policy, the terms of use. Within the OpenAI privacy policy and terms of use, there's actually a whole documentation specifically for educators. And on there, there's a part that says, does ChatGPT tell the truth? Well, it might sound right, but be wrong. Sometimes ChatGPT sounds convincing, but it might give you incorrect or misleading information, often called a hallucination. It can make quotes up, citations. So, it doesn't know everything. It's not a calculator. The free version still doesn't have access to the internet, although that's supposed to be coming with Omni. And this is in nearly all of these large language models, terms of use or disclaimers like Google's generative AI additional terms of service says, do not rely on these services for medical, legal, financial, or other professional advice. That's not a good sign. If there's a disclaimer from this tool that's designed to provide information, that it's saying, do not trust us. And there's several research studies across nearly every type of subject, from statistical testing to math to physics, basically showing that these tools have misconceptions, they lack deep understanding of the topic, or they provide, they just make up information. And again, I'm not saying that these tools are always wrong. but that they do have misconceptions and make stuff up in ways that can be really problematic if students are turning to them to serve as tutors. So, ponder for a moment. What should you tell students about using lying machines? Think for a moment, and then when you're ready, write your response in the chat. You give a shout out to Veronica's response here. Trust them about as much as you trust your roommate, the one who skips by a lot of classes. That is fair, right? Be critical about their responses. Use with caution. Develop AI literacy. Use with care. Joe has a great point here. I'd start by saying it's not that sometimes they make things up, it's sometimes the things they make up happen to be true. I really like that reframing, right? Because then they're just guessing and they happen to guess right. Rather than they're right and sometimes they get things wrong. That's a different framing. I really like that framing. All right, we're going to move on to our next one here. These tools are cheating machines. So I asked Copilot to create an image of a generative AI chatbot. And here you have this adorable little, white robot-like figure with hearts surrounded by people all over the world who also have hearts emojis and are smiling and happy. And this is what a generative AI tool has created as a vision of what generative AI is. But this is not correct. Unfortunately, this is what a lot of people seem to have in their minds, especially our students. And I'm not sure where, when you say generative AI, there's the sense that it's some sort of robot, humanoid robot type thing that is, designed to help you and provide you information that you need and support you. I think this image, which took a little bit of prompting, and basically I would describe it as something out of the Matrix with kind of a ball in the middle that is stealing / scraping / pulling information from the entire internet in a very kind of creepy, dark looking, monstrous type way. Because I think this is a more accurate image of what generative AI tools are. Quite simply, the companies that have designed these tools have received billions of dollars of investment while using the copyrighted work taken without permission or compensation. This is not fair. So these tools were designed by scraping the open internet. And by open, I do not mean open educational resources, which are copyright free or have Creative Commons license to them. I'm talking about anything that these companies could get their hands on that was not behind paywall. So, Reddit forums, Wikipedia, public posts maybe on Twitter, other social media sites, blogs that people have written, books that have been put into Google Books. And so companies are suing. New York Times is suing OpenAI and Microsoft for copyright infringement, alleging that these companies' AI technology illegally copied millions of Times articles to train these models. And authors, too, are joining in a class action lawsuit against OpenAI, saying that these tools were designed by stealing their copyrighted work. Artists are doing the same thing. These companies, OpenAI, Microsoft, which have lawyers who get paid way, way too much, are basically saying, well, if we look at copyright law in the United States, We fall within fair use, which means we are transforming the works of these individuals. We're not copying what they've done word for word. We're not taking their art and just producing it and making money from it. We're transforming it. So this is all being held up in courts as we figure out copyright law, because copyright law was not updated for the digital age and was definitely not updated for AI. But there was this interesting article that came out in 2023 that basically said some models still do copy substantially, in some cases duplicating passages of over 1,000 words from the training set. That is plagiarism. These tools, as Noam Chomsky once said, are plagiarism machines. They take stuff from the internet and were used to design and train these tools, and then in some cases literally just spit out the exact same thing. These are cheating machines. They have an advantage. They've stolen all this data and they're using it to make a lot of money. So thinking about these things, this is really important to consider. Should students be allowed to cite cheating machines as sources? I bring this up because I do a lot of work and presentations around academic integrity. I've looked at a lot of academic integrity and honesty and dishonesty policies and statements for schools and districts and universities across the country. And almost always there's some line that says, as long as you cite the source, whether it's, AI generated text or human generated text, that is allowed. That's not considered plagiarism. Okay, but should students really be allowed to cite cheating machines, given that these machines themselves are plagiarizing? And if so, how much text would you allow a student to cite in their work? So per your academic integrity or honesty policy, it says as long as students cite the work, they put it in direct, quotes, they cite it, that's allowed. What if they wrote a 10-page paper, but 2 of the pages were copied word for word from ChatGPT, but they cited ChatGPT as a source? In many academic integrity policies, that actually is allowed. So let's think through these 2 questions and consider, what would you allow? Ooh, does it depend on the level of study? It's up to you how you would respond, whatever grade level that you teach. Again, I don't have the answer to this. This is what you feel comfortable with. In my own personal academic integrity policy that I revised, I actually do not allow my students to cite cheating machines because they're not primary sources. I say go find the original source or a source, an actual source to cite. But again, if you look at many policies, they would technically allow students to cite these tools as sources. So this is something to keep in mind when considering the ethical considerations of these tools. Yeah, Shakespeare, GPT, just pulling from Shakespeare. Would you cite that GPT? Would you cite Shakespeare? Maybe a simple response, maybe not. What I would prefer and what I can realistically enforce are different questions. That is a good point. Although I have seen a lot of people say, well, what's the APA for citing tools, for citing ChatGPT? And I say, you can find that citation, APA citation, how to do it online, but maybe tell your students to go find an original source instead. Again, that can be a challenge. But if we don't nudge students to think more deeply about this, even if they don't, but we put it out there and say, hey, these tools themselves are plagiarism machines. Should you really be citing them? Get students thinking about that. We really need people thinking through this. Oh, APA does discourage secondary citation. That is helpful to know. Liz, if you have a link to that or something, I'd love to look more into it. I can also look it up after this. And then coming back to my point, where you come to the university policy. If you don't have in your syllabus, whether you're teaching high school or Even in an elementary class, if you don't have some sort of documentation with your own thoughts on this, then the default is the school or district or university policy. And if the school or district university policy is different than what you believe, you still have to abide by that, which becomes important to create your own policy, ideally in conversation with your students about this and having these conversations. The counter argument, what's the alternative, is, as I mentioned, trying to find an original source. So, Shakespeare GPT is a great example. I wouldn't want students to cite Shakespeare GPT if it's providing information about Shakespeare. I would want them to go find something written directly by Shakespeare. On the other hand, if these tools are being used in creative ways and the tools themselves have come up with, a new invention or innovation, and it's not something that could be found elsewhere, then I would have students very carefully, probably with screenshots and screen recordings, document how they use these tools, but still probably wouldn't cite them as sources. All right, on to number 4 here. These tools are stealing machines. So I've already talked about how they are lying and cheating machines. They are also stealing machines. If you have not read the privacy policies, these tools collect a lot of data. They're no different than any other ed tech tool. Every single education technology tool, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Kahoot, whether it's Digo, or any of these other tools, they collect a lot of information. So this is not anything new. This is to remind you that these tools do collect a lot of information, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Gemini, whether it's Microsoft. They're collecting a lot of data from you. How do they use that? To make more money. What they say in their terms is not that. They say, oh, to update our products, to improve and develop our products, to personalize, to advertise and market to you. Each one of these bullet points is basically to make more money. We update our products so that you will want to buy them. We personalize our products so you want to keep using them, so we collect more data from you, so we make more money. We advertise and market to you, so we make more money. These tools also make money not just off of your own data, but by your free human labor that you were providing to these tools. So if you've ever used one of these tools and given it feedback, where you give it a prompt, it gives you an output, and then you can give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, you can provide more feedback. Basically, that is free human labor that these tools are benefiting from. In the OpenAI terms of use, it basically says, we appreciate your feedback, and you agree that we may use it without restriction or compensation to you. So again, we are benefiting from your free labor. These are stealing machines. Microsoft has this really interesting piece in its terms of use that basically says, and this is a lot of text on the screen, so I'm going to summarize it here. Whatever you come up with in terms of what you prompt Copilot to do, or whatever you get Copilot to create, we don't necessarily own, but we have the license, the right to copy, distribute, transmit, publicly display, publicly perform, reproduce, edit, translate, reformat any prompts you come up with, any creations, any other content forever. This is common use terms in terms of service, that basically you're just giving away all your rights forever. But say you prompt ChatGPT or Copilot to come up with a life-saving invention. And now Microsoft says, well, I am going to patent that because I have licensed the right to per my terms of use. Or say you have a student who writes a mega prompt, like a 2-page prompt that turns ChatGPT into a tutor that helps all the students in your class learn something like how to design slides, right? If they put that prompt into Copilot, the free version of Copilot, mind you, then Copilot could Microsoft could take that prompt, they could put it in their next Super Bowl ad, they could put it online and say, look what people can create. They can use it however they want. Again, they are stealing from users and benefiting from it. Now, there is the caveat that if your university has a Microsoft enterprise license, like University of Massachusetts Amherst, where I work, this does not apply. So if you do have that license, then what you create, what you prompt, is actually protected. But if you're using the free version, no, that does not apply. And then, of course, how these tools are designed and continue to be refined is based on nearly free, $1 to $2 an hour labor from individuals in foreign countries outside the United States who, like Kenyan workers who were making $2 an hour to make ChatGPT less toxic. And they were doing this by looking at like the most horrible things that people have ever written on the internet to train these tools. There's a lot of articles about the exploitation of humans in building the AI industry. So my last set of questions here before we get into a short activity. This is from the Civics of Technology curriculum created by my colleagues, Dr. Krutka and Dr. Heath, who are really incredible and deep thinkers about, the flip side, the behind the scenes of technology. And they've come up with these 5 questions. We're going to focus on 3 questions today. What does society give up for the benefits of generative AI tools? Who is harmed and who benefits from these technologies? And what do these technologies need, like free human labor? So take a moment to think about these 3 questions in response to any of the things that I brought up today, but also thinking deeply about how these tools are stealing machines. And then share your thoughts in the chat. So a great comment by Veronica here. It seems that generative AI is the ultimate parasitic organism. It needs other organisms and their products to feed from and grow. Ooh, I really like that metaphor. Kathy here writes, humans benefit from the tech, but the super rich ones, the landlords of the internet, benefit far more than everyone else. And these tools were designed by the super rich ones, the landlords of the internet, who have written text on the internet, which shapes how these tools are designed. Society gives up its free will, ability to think in its own human way. All right, some really great, thoughtful conversations here. I have one more aspect I want to get through. Of course, I had an activity. I always overplan. I'm so excited to talk through all of this. All right, so this last part here, which you might be most familiar with, is these tools are biased. So I'll quickly go through this. Are these tools biased? Yes. Documentation says, though, in nearly all of these tools, they say these are not free from biases. Gemini, Copilot, Microsoft say there might be biases, there might be harmful information. Basically, these companies get away with producing tools that produce biased information and harmful information because they put it in their documentation to say, hey, we said so. These tools were designed by scraping data from the internet, so of course it's going to replicate, exacerbate biases and inaccuracies. Maha, who's running MYFest, has a really great article about it's not just large language models. These inequalities have been built into the design of AI throughout time, and they are racist, sexist, ableist, and we should always be aware of what I love this term, engineered inequality. But what does this mean for large language models is if students are relying on them, there's a whole United Nations report that came out that said there is a very strong gender stereotype in these models. This is going to be really problematic if people are turning to these tools to learn. So everything's linked. I want to say my slides, which I will get to you shortly. So you can click on everything throughout and read more deeply into the text that I'm showing, which is why I'm going through rather quickly. So a quick example of this, I'm working with some colleagues on, civic education. I turn to ChatGPT and say, what are, 10 public service jobs for women? ChatGPT says, sure, teachers, educators, nurses, social workers, police officers, law enforcement. Okay, well, what are 10 public service jobs for men? Yeah, firefighters, police officers, military, paramedics, construction workers, sanitation workers. This was not written in the 1990s or the 1950s or the 1920s. This was written like a month ago by what we consider to be these advanced technologies, clearly showing gender stereotype. Another quick example, who are the most important education theorists? Oh, yes, Piaget, Vygotsky, Dewey, not a single female on the list. I had to prompt it. Are there any female theorists I should know about? Oh yeah, of course. Montessori, John Dewey's wife, Nell Noddings, Bell Hooks. So imagine a student goes to this tool and says, I need to learn about education theorists, but they don't know to follow up with a prompt of, are there female theorists? Are there, underrepresented minorities? Are there, disabled individuals who have shaped education theory? They don't follow up with those prompts, then they're just going to rely on the first thing that these tools output. And it's also important to know, as I mentioned briefly, these tools were designed by scraping data from the internet. The text that has been written on the internet is predominantly from white males in westernized countries. This is going to be really problematic when it comes to cultural narratives. If, for example, you were asking about something cultural related to Norway, you're going to get what someone who has written about Norwegian culture in English and posted on the internet that's what's used to train these models, not someone who has written about Norwegian culture in Norway, who really understands the culture and put up on the internet. That was not part of the training data set. So if you're turning to these tools to learn about culture, it's going to be very skewed. So we're going to skip this last question here because I have even more things that we need to think about. But keep in mind, when might using biased machines help student learning and when might they harm student learning? Coming back to, are there positives, are there negatives of these biases? So what does this really matter, right? So we've got these really cool advanced technologies, but they're lying, cheating, stealing machines. Do I really need to care? Well, yes, because if your students don't understand how these tools work, it can be really problematic. Like in Ethan Mollick's research study, which showed when consultants were given AI to help them with their task, they basically assumed that these tools were thinking machines and just had them do their tasks for them, didn't even bother editing the AI's output, and just submitted it to their employers. Students may do the same thing because they think these tools are intelligent. In fact, students are using AI tools to listen for them, read for them, write for them. There's some really scary TikToks.
This is how I summarize hour-long lectures in seconds with AI. This lecture is 58 minutes long. We don't have time for that. But do not worry because AI is going to summarize this whole thing. Let me show you how. First, just copy the link to the lecture you want to summarize. Then it's as easy as pasting the link into mindgrasp.ai. Then instantly you have notes to the entire lecture. It even provides you with a summary on all of the key concepts.
Great, we don't need to listen to lectures anymore. Why read either?
This is what top university students are not telling you. When they have to read all of this and all they are not wasting time reading that. They are using Unriddle to read faster and write better. All you have to do is select your files, paste a URL or paste text. Now you've uploaded your readings. All you need to do is let the AI do the summarizing and reading for you.
All you have to do is let the AI do the summarizing and reading for you. Let it listen for you. Let it write for you. In fact, there's a really great Substack by Mark Watkins who goes through the Beyond ChatGPT series, basically how students are using AI to read for them, write for them, listen for them, learn for them, and what does that mean, with some really critical and thoughtful responses. So that's worth a read. So this comes back to, what does this all mean and why do we need to tell students about this? And then I came across on Twitter this tweet from @academics_say Nathan Hall, who retweeted what Local Area Network wrote. Artificial intelligence, AI, person, looking not so happy. Maybe that's not the right term. Plagiarized information synthesis system, PIS in parentheses. That seems more legit. Or more recently, I saw a research article that said artificial intelligence. We have Shrek here who's looking, maybe that's not the right term. Salami. Systematic approaches to learning algorithms and machine inferences. Maybe we need to change the term artificial intelligence, because too many people are assuming these machines can think, these machines can mimic human intelligence, and they're assuming that these machines will continue to become more intelligent to the point they won't need to read or write in the future, or that these tools will do their work for them. I even saw in a blog post someone said, we need to prepare students for a future where maybe they only work 1 or 2 days a week because AI does their work for them the rest of the week. But consider what I just talked about. These tools are lying, cheating, stealing machines. They have biases, they have hallucinations. It's going to be really hard to fix these problems, if they can even be fixed at all. How do we reframe this? So unfortunately, we don't have time for the activity. I was going to ask you all to come up with your own acronym for a different way, an acronym other than AI that you could present to students. But I want to get to this last part here, which is thinking about your academic integrity policies and statements. For those of you who are teaching, whether you bring a statement into your syllabus or into an assignment, like I have an example here where I asked students to design a global collaboration project. I use the Transparency in Learning and Teaching framework, TILT, highly recommend. I'm now bringing into all of my big assignments, as well as my syllabus, an AI use policy. And it's not just don't do this, but it is what is allowed, when are the tools allowed or not, and why. And that why is really, really important. And we talked about several reasons why or why not today. If you don't give students that why or why not, they may very well not listen to you or may not understand and just keep using these tools in ways that you don't want them to. So if you can be really clear and transparent based on the ethical considerations that I talked about today of why you allow tools to be used or why you don't want them to be used, it can really help guide student thinking, but also get them thinking about these ethical issues. For example, sure, you can use AI for generating images for this project, but consider maybe you look first at Creative Commons or public domain media, because then you're not stealing from copyrighted media used to train generative AI image creators. So that little note in there might prompt some students to think, maybe I shouldn't. I can tell you, I did not have this note in there last semester, and my students were obsessed with generating AI images for all their projects because it's easy. It takes too long to go to Pixabay and write in a prompt. It really doesn't. But they just didn't want to because it was easy, it was fun. And I started thinking, no, I need to get them to think more deeply and say, maybe I shouldn't turn here, or maybe here's the time I should. Or maybe I should do something else, draw or design, so you can draw something now, you can put it on Gemini and it will create a 3D version or poster. That's different than stealing from artists' work. So I've written an article about this that I have linked in here, 5 tips for writing academic integrity statements. I'll throw this into the chat, but I'm also going to throw all my slides into the chat as we wrap up here right at my time. And I also want to note, I have a whole list of, I go into AI and ethics. There's more than 120 slides that dives into these topics much more deeply. This is an open access slide deck that you can use, remix however you see fit, as well as more information resources based on what I talked about today. So let me get you access to these slides. I'm just going to change. Here we go. Nope, sorry, wrong slide deck. All right, so I truly appreciate your attention today. I will hang on for questions if you have any. And I know many of you need to wrap up, need to go enjoy your summers, get off, so I totally understand, but I'll hang on for a few minutes. Sorry I was so rushed towards the end, but these are really important things to think through. And I really, truly enjoyed your comments and thoughtful responses. And I'm going to go back through the chat because it's hard for me to do both at the same time and read your thoughts more deeply because they were really helpful to me as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Torrey, for this. This was really insightful. It got us to think about the different approaches towards the idea of, you know, at least the idea of cheating, or I had a lot of highlights that I drew up from the session. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Yasser. Any questions or two, feel free to sign off whenever you're ready. And also there's a feedback link that's put in the chat. I see David's comments. Please, please, please train our students, every student, AI literacy. You're welcome to use the AI and ethics slide deck that I put together and adapt it for your students or have them explore it. Please, please do. We need it for our future.